The mask everyone wears. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like something was deeply wrong, even though the other person smiled the entire time? Have you ever met someone who seemed effortlessly confident, only to discover months later that they were quietly falling apart? Or perhaps you've caught yourself saying, "I'm fine," not because you were, but because explaining the truth felt far more exhausting than hiding it. We spend our lives believing that language exists to reveal who we are. But what if it was designed to conceal us? Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the greatest mystery about human beings isn't that they lie to one another. It's that they become so skilled at wearing masks, they eventually forget they're wearing one. And once that happens, even they can no longer tell where the mask ends and the real person begins. Because every human being carries two stories, the one they show the world and the one they protect from it. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives reacting to the first story without ever realizing the second one exists. But if you learn to see beyond appearances, people begin to make sense in ways that are almost unsettling. The arrogant person suddenly looks frightened. The perfectionist looks wounded. The comedian looks lonely. And the cold-hearted person no longer seems heartless at all. They seem careful. When Nietzsche wrote, "Every profound spirit needs a mask," he wasn't celebrating deception. He was describing survival, because the world has never been particularly kind to vulnerability. Think about a child. A child cries openly, laughs without shame, trusts easily, feels everything completely. But life has a way of teaching different lessons. Some children learn that showing emotion leads to ridicule. Others learn that asking for love leads to rejection. Some discover that being honest gets them punished. Slowly, almost invisibly, they adapt. Not because they become fake, because they become safe. The child who was ignored becomes entertaining. The child who was criticized becomes perfect. The child who was betrayed becomes distant. The child who was controlled becomes obsessed with control. These aren't personalities, not at first. They're survival strategies. And survival strategies have an interesting habit. They don't disappear when the danger ends. They become identity. Years later, people call someone confident. They don't realize confidence may have started as armor. They call someone independent, without noticing independence might simply be another word for someone who stopped believing help would ever come. We often mistake adaptation for character. This is why first impressions are so dangerous. We assume we're seeing people. More often, we're seeing their defenses. The businessman who never stops talking about success. The woman who laughs at everything. The friend who insists they never need anyone. The person who always has to be right. Each appears completely different. Yet beneath all of them, the same invisible question quietly echoes. If people saw who I really am, would they still stay? Perhaps this is the most universal fear of all. Not failure, not rejection, exposure. Because to be truly seen is to risk discovering that the parts you've hidden for years were the very parts that deserve compassion. So instead, we polish the mask. We become funnier, smarter, kinder, stronger, more successful, more mysterious. Anything except exposed. Society rewards this. It applauds performance. It praises certainty. It celebrates confidence. Rarely does it reward honest vulnerability, which means the better someone becomes at acting, the more the world mistakes the performance for the person. But here's the fascinating thing. Masks are never perfect. No matter how carefully someone constructs an identity, the truth always escapes, not through speeches, not through carefully chosen words, but through moments no one rehearses. Watch what happens when someone isn't speaking. Silence reveals what language hides. Notice the person who becomes uncomfortable the moment conversation stops. Why do they rush to fill every quiet moment? What are they trying not to hear? Watch how someone reacts to harmless criticism. Some people consider it. Others experience it, like an attack on their existence. The criticism isn't what hurts. It awakens something older, something that existed long before this conversation. Notice what people joke about repeatedly. Humor often disguises pain so effectively that even the storyteller forgets its origin. Pay attention to the subjects people avoid. Sometimes what a person refuses to discuss tells you far more than everything they willingly share. Because the unconscious has a peculiar habit. It leaks, a trembling voice, an unusually defensive reaction, a smile that arrives half a second too late, eyes that suddenly look away, tiny cracks through which the hidden self quietly breathes. Most people miss these moments, not because they're invisible, because they're listening to words instead of watching the human being speaking them. There is another illusion we rarely question. We believe people consciously choose who they become. But how much of your personality did you actually choose? Did you choose what frightened you as a child? Did you choose the words that hurt you most? Did you choose the people who taught you what love looked like? Or did those experiences quietly shape you long before you understood they were shaping you? By adulthood, many of our habits feel natural. But natural doesn't always mean original. Sometimes what feels like you is simply a collection of old defenses that have been repeated for so many years, they've become invisible. And perhaps that's why self-discovery is so difficult. You aren't just trying to discover who you are. You're trying to separate yourself from the person you had to become. This changes everything. Instead of asking, who is this person? You begin asking, what protected them into becoming this person? Suddenly, the conversation changes. You stop seeing arrogance. You start seeing fear. You stop seeing emotional distance. You start seeing disappointment. You stop seeing perfectionism. You start seeing a child who once believed mistakes made them unlovable. Not every interpretation will be correct. Human beings are far too complex for simple formulas, but asking better questions always reveals deeper truths than making quick judgments. And that's exactly where Nietzsche wanted us to look. Not at behavior itself, but at the invisible forces creating it. Because once you realize that every mask was built for a reason, another disturbing question naturally appears. If people spend so much energy hiding themselves, what happens when they judge someone else? Are they describing the other person or accidentally revealing themselves? In the next part, we'll explore why every harsh judgment may be less of an accusation and more of a confession. Every judgment is a confession. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is wearing invisible mirrors. Every opinion they express, every insult they throw, every person they admire, every person they despise, is quietly reflecting something back about themselves. At first, that sounds impossible. After all, when someone calls another person arrogant, they're talking about that person, aren't they? Not necessarily. Nietzsche believed that we rarely experience reality directly. We experience it through the architecture of our own minds, our memories, our fears, our desires, our disappointments. The world we think we see is often the world we carry within us, which means that when people speak passionately about others, they are often revealing parts of themselves they have never fully understood, sometimes and without realizing it. Think about the people who trigger unusually strong emotions in you. Not simple annoyance, not ordinary disagreement, but the kind of reaction that stays with you for hours or even days. Why them? Why that behavior? Why does one person's confidence inspire you, while another person's confidence makes your blood boil? Why does one lie seem forgivable, while another feels unforgettable? Most of us assume the answer is obvious, because they're wrong, but Nietzsche would probably ask a different question. Why did that particular behavior find a home inside you? Because people rarely react with intensity to things that mean nothing to them. Strong emotions usually point towards something unfinished, something unresolved, something waiting to be understood. Modern psychology calls one part of this process projection. Nietzsche didn't use that psychological language, but many of his observations point toward the same unsettling truth. The mind has an extraordinary ability to hide painful realities from itself. Instead of admitting, I'm deeply insecure, it becomes much easier to believe everyone else is arrogant. Instead of facing envy, we convince ourselves that successful people are shallow. Instead of admitting we crave attention, we mock those who receive it. The uncomfortable truth doesn't disappear. It simply changes direction. Rather than looking inward, it is projected outward. The mind protects the ego by turning an internal conflict into an external enemy. And once that happens, judgment feels like justice, even when it isn't. Have you ever noticed how some people seem obsessed with a particular flaw? They see it everywhere. Every confident person is full of themselves. Every attractive person is attention-seeking. Every wealthy person is greedy. Every quiet person is cold. Eventually you begin to wonder, are they describing reality or repeating a story they've been telling themselves for years? Because once a wound shapes your perception, you stop seeing people clearly. You begin seeing evidence. Evidence that confirms what you've already decided about the world. A child betrayed by someone they trusted may grow into an adult who sees betrayal everywhere. Someone repeatedly humiliated may interpret ordinary disagreement as personal attack. A person who never felt valued may become unusually sensitive to being ignored. The present is no longer just the present. It becomes a stage where old memories keep replaying, wearing new faces. This is why people often defend their beliefs with astonishing intensity. Sometimes they're not protecting an idea. They're protecting an old wound. Think about how quickly conversations become emotional. Politics, religion, success, relationships, money, status. Very few people argue from pure logic. Most argue from experience, from memory, from pain. Two people can hear the exact same sentence and experience two completely different realities. Not because one is intelligent and the other isn't, but because every mind filters reality through its own history. This changes the question completely. Instead of asking, why are they saying this? Try asking, what feeling might they be protecting? What are they afraid of experiencing again? Humiliation, rejection, abandonment, failure, shame. Fear has a remarkable talent. It disguises itself as certainty. The louder someone insists, I'm absolutely right, the more you should wonder whether certainty is protecting something fragile beneath it. Of course, this doesn't mean every criticism is projection. Sometimes people are simply correct. Some people really are dishonest. Some people really are selfish. Some actions deserve criticism. Nietzsche wasn't asking us to abandon judgment. He was asking us to become suspicious of emotional certainty. Because the stronger the emotional reaction, the more likely something personal has entered the conversation. Wisdom begins when you learn to separate observation from emotional investment, to see clearly, without immediately becoming consumed by what you see. That is far more difficult than it sounds, because the ego doesn't enjoy being questioned. It would rather judge than understand. There's another side to projection, one that people rarely talk about. We don't only project our darkness, we project our light. Sometimes the people we admire are carrying qualities we've abandoned in ourselves. You meet someone fearless and suddenly feel inspired, not because they gave you courage, but because they awakened courage that had been sleeping inside you. You admire someone's discipline because a part of you longs to become disciplined. You admire someone's honesty because you've grown tired of pretending. In this way, admiration becomes a map. It quietly points toward the person you're capable of becoming. Hatred can reveal hidden fears. Admiration can reveal hidden potential. Both are mirrors. The difference is simply what they reflect. This realization changes the way you move through the world. When someone attacks you, you no longer rush to believe them, but you also don't rush to hate them. Instead, you become curious, not weak, curious. Because curiosity sees farther than anger ever will. You begin noticing patterns. The person obsessed with status, the person desperate to be admired, the person who constantly compares themselves to everyone else, the person who cannot celebrate another person's success. They're all searching for something: respect, safety, love, worth. But they're searching in places where those things can never permanently be found. And that's why the search never ends. Perhaps the greatest illusion of all is believing that if we judge enough, criticize enough, or expose enough flaws in other people, we'll finally feel complete. But the emptiness always returns, because no amount of judging another person can heal a wound you refuse to face yourself. Sooner or later, every human being reaches the same crossroads. Continue blaming the world or begin understanding yourself. Nietzsche believed that the second path is far more painful, but it's also the only one that leads to freedom. And yet, even after someone begins understanding themselves, another temptation quietly remains. The temptation to appear superior, to become stronger than everyone else, to build an identity so impressive that no one ever notices the frightened child hiding beneath it. In the final part, we'll explore why the loudest displays of power often conceal the deepest feelings of weakness, and why true strength has almost nothing to do with appearing strong at all.